Well, we're here today with Tom Porter to discuss the Little Bear fire. This is the gentleman who called the fire in. He's been working as a voluntary fireman for many years. Can you give us some of your background, please?
We started Jackrabbit Flats about 15 years ago, basically just to cover this area in the county. I've been chief for the last 6 years. We just opened up a second main north of Tularosa to cover that part of the county. We are looking at probably 28 active members in the fire department right now.
Okay. Now, you were the one that actually first called in the fire, is that correct?
Yes, I was working as a construction superintendent on Highway 54. We had a rainstorm come through at about mile marker 115, which is just north of Oscuro. And we had a few lightning strikes down in the flats. And of course, watched this thing climb the hills and had one lightning strike just above White Horse Mountain, which is above Three Rivers Campground. As dry as it is, I kind of kept an eye on it. And about 10 minutes later, noticed that we did have smoke coming off of that fire. Got a hold of Otero County Sheriff's Department dispatch to get BIA notified that, because from where I was sitting, it looked like it might have been on the reservation.
Okay. And BIA, let's go ahead and specify.
Bureau of Indian Affairs.
Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. I just for everybody.
Yeah. They sent a crew out. They had a crew out there by 5 p.m. And we had an active fire. It was half acre at the time.
Okay. And what happened from there?
My understanding from the information I've gathered from Lincoln County and the people that work up there, the crew was informed to use this as a controlled burn to clean up the old undergrowth that's up there. Forestry now has the policy that if there's on wild lands, that if a natural caused fire is started, to let it develop into its own and use it to clear out the old growth.
Okay. Now, if we're using this as a prescribed burn, what are the steps that are taken to try and still keep the fire under control?
They keep a crew on there to maintain it and basically keep fire lines from letting it spread.
Okay. And so how many were there at that time?
From what I've been told, they had a crew of 5 on the ground.
Crew of 5, okay. And then how did things go for the rest of Monday and into Tuesday?
Monday they basically observed. Tuesday they were basically just making sure that it didn't spread out of control. And there again, the weather Tuesday through Thursday, we had beautiful weather, no high winds. They kept it in check, kept it approximately, from what I've been told, 20 to 30 acres.
Okay.
And just basically burning the undergrowth.
Okay. Now, when did you start requesting for water?
They had actually, the ground crew from what I've been told, requested water immediately to put it out.
So on Monday?
On Monday afternoon. And they were told, that's when they were told, use this as a controlled burn.
Okay. Now, there was a second call asking for water as well.
And I do believe that came in on Friday morning.
Friday morning.
Because they had fire lines established and it had jumped their original lines. They reestablished another set of fire lines, and that's when they realized they were having problems.
Okay. Now, on Thursday, a major incident happened. They had fire lines going, and what happened?
I haven't heard about Thursday.
Okay.
And I knew about the Friday morning incidents, where it was jumping the lines.
Okay, so maybe it was Friday that I'm thinking of, but at one point, didn't the National Parks Department say to move away from the lines and let them go ahead and burn?
And I do believe that was Friday.
That was Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, so on Friday they said go ahead and let this burn. The fire began jumping lines, and can you tell me as much as possible about Friday?
That's pretty much all I know as far as what happened on the scene.
Okay.
Until basically they started calling in for volunteer departments to stage in Ruidoso because they had ash and cinders coming in into the village limits.
Okay. All right. And into the outer kind of
Yes.
suburban area.
Alto,
Right.
Nogel.
Let's see, we've got Loma Grande and all of that in there.
Yeah.
Tell us some about the policy. How did this stuff start? Why wasn't it given water immediately? Take this thing out. We're basically looking at very dry conditions, not a good time for a prescribed burn. Why treat it as a prescribed burn?
It goes back 30 years. When the logging used to clear cut, there was an issue. And now we have groups that, have petitioned courts. And unfortunately, all this has gone into court. It's not a one blame deal. I mean, everybody's to blame on this. You've got, we don't clear cut anymore. We do try to do selective logging. Well, you have certain groups that have sued to completely stop logging and let Mother Nature take care of her own. Well, unfortunately, you take 30 years of that and add in right up until the last 5 years when policy changed, you've got 30 years of there's a spot fire, put it out. There's a spot fire, put it out. You add 30 years of that, now you've got 30 years of growth in there that naturally Mother Nature would burn off every 5 years.
Right.
And now you've got 30 years, so when you get a little fire, it's not a little fire.
Right.
So forestry's policy now, and has been for the last few years, you get a naturally caused fire, let it do what it does naturally.
Okay. Now, let me see, just repeat back to make sure I understand. Basically, what has been needed to happen is to do some selective cutting in those, specifically the wilderness areas.
Well, it's not just the wilderness areas. I mean, you go up into Cloudcroft, and now they're finally starting to do it again. They're getting in there, and even around the houses, you got to get rid of your ladder fuels, which is the dead branches on the bottom of the trees, the diseased trees. Let the healthy ones have the moisture they need, instead of letting it just and grow wild. Sounds nice.
Right.
But when it's grow wild and you've got 30 houses in there and one spark sets it off, well, now it's not natural.
Right. So all of that 30 years of underbrush, all that 30 years of not selectively cutting has added all this fuel that has not only here in the Lincoln County area, but also in the Gila Wilderness has taken over.
It's the same thing. And here again, almost 300,000 acres.
Right. We're talking mass destruction.
And they haven't logged heavily in the Gila, for 15 years. And here again, there's nothing there to take care of it, so Mother Nature's going to take care of herself.
Right. Sorry, the flies are here. People may be wondering why we're waving. Some of the issues have been, you said it's from several different groups. Some have been the environmental groups, some have been problems within the Parks Department, some of them have been lawyers making policy, some has been governmental issues.
And like I said, it's full circle. There's not just one person to blame.
Right.
Forestry goes in and tries to thin a place. You've got a judge in Texas telling us what we can do in Lincoln National Forest.
Right.
Because some group in another state petitioned because there may be an owl in the area. Yes, we have to protect our endangered species. Right. But we also have to protect ourselves.
Protect the human lives.
Yeah.
And our national forests.
Yes. Well, and there's, as of last night, roughly 15,000 acres. Have we protected it?
Right. We're looking at what we're calling for here is for people to look at this and as a balanced issue of how to balance it to protect and keep our forest and protect human lives.
And the population of New Mexico is expanding.
Right.
Greatly. We have housing in places that we never had houses 20 years ago. We have subdivisions going in that, years ago with meadows. the ranchers, and you can use the Capitan area as a prime example of this. Years ago on Highway 48, there was no pinon juniper.
Mm-hmm.
The ranchers would go through and do what they called chaining, chaining,
Mm-hmm.
and where they would peel out all that juniper and pinon, so it was ranch land.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that the ranchers are closing down and we're getting subdivisions, this pinon juniper is coming in, and what used to be a meadow is now packed solid with fuels.
Okay.
You know, so I mean, it's one giant circle, and we have to come up with some policies that work for it.
All right. Is there anything that we've missed that you would like to discuss?
It's a shame that policies from another state or even a group of people dictate what happens to the mass, especially with something like this. I mean, people, you know, roughly 30 homes. There's 30 families that are directly affected to this.
Mm-hmm.
Numerous businesses,
Right.
you know, and we're in a tough enough economy right now.
Right.
It's a shame, and we need to get away from the lawyers and start dealing with common sense again.
Right. Okay. I think it's also important to note that we don't really know how many homes or structures that have been affected at this time. They won't be able to have a good count really for several days. We do know of 30 structures, but that's all we know of. But it is believed that there's much more involved. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
Tom. I really appreciate your time.
Can I, while you're still on tape, can
Mhm.
I ask you, manpower, is it an issue of that? Is there a lack of enough people?
No,
to do the
there
work?
there are plenty of people on the scene. Unfortunately, you get into a fire right now, it's creating its own weather. You can't put anybody in direct line with this. I mean, it's just like the fire that happened, the White Fire last year. It's moving so fast, there's no way to get in front of it.
Mhm.
I mean,
But before the fire happened, and you were talking about all these things that could happen that would prevent such a thing.
no,
Is it about?
it's not a
having enough people?
manpower issue, it's a political issue, unfortunately. You know, I logged up between Muscalero and the Lincolns, I logged up there for 12 years, and basically what stopped it was the politics.
And now let's also make a very clear point that we're not talking about clear-cut logging.
No, this is selective
very
logging.
selective
Yes,
and careful.
if
logging.
you drive through Muscalero
Mhm.
now and you look at their forests, their ladder fuels are gone, their ground clutter is gone.
Mhm.
The healthy trees are still standing.
Right.
They've gone through, tree gets hit by lightning, it's out of there. A tree has a sign of bark beetles or mistletoe, or clipper beetles.
Mhm.
Those are the three big problems we have in this state.
Mhm.
Get in there, get that pocket of logs, trees, diseased, get them out of there before they affect the rest of the forest.
And which they can actually kill the forest.
Prime example of that is over towards Mayhill when they had the big deal with the clipper beetles. I believe that was 4 years ago.
Mhm.
It devastated that forest 20 square miles.
Okay.
There wasn't a green tree to be found out there.
Okay.
Whereas if it had been stopped, you know, when it first started, got in there, thinned it out. And also with the thinning, you know, a tree uses X amount of gallons a day. Well, you start getting tree on top of tree on top of tree. Now you've got a whole weak forest that is susceptible to disease.
Right. Okay.
You know, it's not really like I said, it's not a manpower issue.
Right. We're talking about a need for balance in our policies to make our forests safer, is what we're looking at.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's a very reasonable request.